You're listening to The Talent Sorted. Here we talk about the good, the bad, and the messy parts of talent acquisition. Presented by Eximius, your co-pilot for smarter hiring. To break down today's topic, I'm handing it over to our virtual experts, Alex and Jamie. What's on the agenda today, guys?
Last year, nearly 40% of job candidates were rejected, not because they lacked the right technical skills.
Right.
And not because they bombed a whiteboard test or, had a bad reference. They were rejected for completely arbitrary reasons.
Which is just wild.
It is.
Yeah.
Including, and I'm entirely serious about this data point, the fact that the candidate didn't smile enough during the interview.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So welcome to part 4 of our special 6-part deep dive series presented by Eximius AI, focusing on modern hiring infrastructure.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, our mission is to unpack the critical and honestly, often chaotic phase of evaluation. And just to set the parameters for you listening right out of the gate, this is strictly about how hiring teams assess talent.
Right, the human element.
Exactly. We are not going down any speculative sci-fi tangents about AI replacing human recruiters today.
Which is an important boundary to set, really, because the operational reality is that human judgment is still the engine of the hiring process.
For sure.
The problem isn't the presence of humans, The problem is the absolute lack of infrastructure supporting their decisions. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is just currently failing at scale.
Failing might be an understatement, honestly.
Yeah.
I look at this data, and I have a very, very rigid stance here.
I know you do.
I really do. Gut feeling is the absolute enemy of good hiring. It is a massive operational vulnerability.
Well, I think...
When hiring managers tell me they, just had a good feeling about a candidate, I don't hear intuition. I hear a complete lack of rigorous structured scorecards.
Yeah, but...
I hear an absence of data. We are running complex, multi-million-dollar business units, and we're staffing them based on vibes. It's crazy.
Okay, I understand the hostility toward gut feeling when it's used as a substitute for evidence. I get that.
Right.
But if we look at the mechanics of senior or highly collaborative roles, say like a VP of engineering or a head of design intuition or, more accurately, the assessment of intangibles, still carries weight.
Intangibles, right.
Yeah. If you overstructure the evaluation to the point of rigidity, if you force every single human interaction through a strictly binary, unyielding checklist, the process just becomes robotic.
But doesn't that protect the process?
No, because you end up filtering out the candidate's authentic voice. You lose their leadership nuance, their ability to navigate ambiguity.
But wait, even for a VP role, isn't assessing intangibles or cultural fit just a legally and corporately safe way to say, I want to hire my buddy?
Not always.
Or, I want to hire someone who went to my university. We give it a fancy name, but the mechanism is just affinity bias in a Patagonia vest.
That's funny. But it absolutely can be that. If left unchecked, that's the danger, sure. But organizational navigation is a real skill.
Sure.
Building rapport with a hostile C-suite is a real skill. You can't always capture that with a coding test. The resolution to this tension isn't to just banish human judgment entirely.
So what's the resolution then?
It's to realize that structure sets the floor, but calibrated human judgment raises the ceiling.
Structure sets the floor, judgment raises the ceiling.
Okay. Right. We have to provide the scaffolding so that the gut feeling is actually an educated synthesis of behavioral evidence, not just, a reaction to whether the candidate smiled enough.
I can accept that framework, provided we actually install the floor first.
Fair point.
Because right now the floor is completely missing. If we look at the 2026 Hiring Insights report, 90% of companies miss their hiring goals.
90%. That's just...
90%. That is a systemic collapse. That isn't a few recruiters having a bad quarter. That is an entire industry failing to execute its primary function.
And we really need to look at the escalating inefficiency behind that 90% figure.
Yeah, let's dig into that.
So a separate recent recruiting benchmarks report analyzed over 140 million applications.
Wow, that's a massive data set.
Huge. And the underlying mechanics of how we hire have degraded significantly. Time to hire has climbed by 24%. It's now averaging 41 days. But here is the critical operational detail. To get to that single hire, teams are conducting 42% more interviews.
42% more.
Yes. We are talking an average of 20 interviews per hire, versus 14 just a few years ago.
20 interviews. Let's break down the anatomy of that exact failure for a second.
Please do.
We are taking longer. We are dragging candidates through 20 rounds of interviews, and we are still missing the target. It's defensive hiring.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody wants to be the person who explicitly says yes and takes responsibility for a bad hire, so they just add another panel interview to diffuse the blame.
Right. Spread the risk around.
Exactly.
Huh.
But even with all that defensive maneuvering, skills misalignment remains the top challenge, cited by 28% of talent leaders.
Which points to a fundamental breakdown at the very beginning of the funnel.
Yeah.
The teams are pushing massive volume through this escalating interview process, but the calibration is completely broken. The intake meeting, the moment where the recruiter and the hiring manager sit down to define what they are actually looking for.
If they even have one.
Right. It's often rushed, superficial, or entirely skipped.
I see this corporate dysfunction constantly. Let me map out how this usually plays out on the ground for you listening.
Go for it.
A hiring manager needs, say, a senior product manager. The recruiter works their network, spends days scouring platforms, and sends over a short list of 5 supposedly qualified candidates.
Okay.
The hiring manager looks at the short list, maybe does a few phone screens, and rejects all 5.
Naturally.
But when the recruiter asks why, the manager cannot articulate a mechanical skills-based reason. They use vague heuristic language, like they just didn't pop.
Didn't pop, yeah. Or they didn't seem hungry enough.
Exactly. Let's just see a few more profiles to calibrate. So the recruiter goes back to square one, and the 41-day clock just keeps ticking.
And the reason those 5 candidates get rejected isn't necessarily because they can't do the job.
Right.
It's because qualified means something entirely different to the recruiter than it does to the hiring manager.
Total disconnect.
Total disconnect. The recruiter is parsing the resume for keywords, historical job titles, and tenure. The manager is secretly looking for a very specific type of problem solver, but they haven't explicitly defined what that problem solving looks like.
They're just waiting to be impressed.
Yes, waiting for a candidate to magically present a signal that they haven't even articulated to themselves.
And in the absence of a defined signal, the cognitive load of staring at 50 resumes forces the hiring manager to panic and default to their gut.
Yep, the gut feeling again.
Which brings us right back to the bias in the machine. A recent workplace equality report dropped a truly unsettling statistic. 68% of HR managers admit their decisions are influenced by factors completely unrelated to job performance.
68%. I mean, that is a staggering admission of systemic vulnerability.
It's terrifying.
More than 2/3 of the people responsible for the architectural makeup of a company's workforce are openly acknowledging that they use non-performance criteria to make life-altering economic decisions.
And this is exactly why I pushed back on the intangibles argument earlier.
Yeah.
Because when you look at how human beings actually operate under pressure, the intangibles usually just devolve into affinity bias.
Yeah.
We are pattern matching machines, but we are incredibly lazy ones. If we don't have a rigid structure telling us what to look for, we just look for ourselves.
We all know the underlying psychology here, but it's particularly dangerous in technical hiring infrastructure. Take the halo effect.
Well, the halo effect is huge.
Right. In a general sense, the halo effect is when one positive trait blinds you to other flaws. But look at how it manifests in our specific domain.
Okay, give me an example.
A hiring manager sees that a candidate contributed to a highly respected, complex, open source project. That's a great technical signal. But the manager then lets that single project cast a halo over entirely unrelated behavioral competencies. They automatically assume the candidate also possesses, elite cross-functional communication skills or high emotional intelligence in a crisis without ever actually testing for those skills.
Yes, the halo, or the Stanford halo. They let a single data point infect the entire evaluation.
Exactly.
Which is why the hard math heavily favors stripping away the fluid conversational guesswork. The correlation coefficient for unstructured interviews predicting actual on-the-job performance is a dismal 0.24.
0.24. So basically a coin flip.
It's worse than a coin flip sometimes.
But structured interviews, they sit at a 0.43 correlation. They're roughly twice as predictive.
That's a massive jump.
It is. Standardizing the process improves hiring accuracy by 81%. I mean, think about that. If a supply chain manager found a tool that improved logistics accuracy by 81%, they would implement it overnight.
Oh, immediately.
But in talent acquisition, we cling to the unstructured chat. Well, the resistance to structure usually stems from a misunderstanding of what structured actually means in practice.
What do you mean?
Hiring managers hear structured interview and they picture an interrogation.
Like a deposition.
Yeah, they picture sitting across from a candidate, reading monotonously from a clipboard. Question 4. Tell me about a time you failed. You have 2 minutes.
Right.
They reject the structure because they correctly intuit that you cannot evaluate senior talent by treating them like they are taking a standardized test.
So how do you reconcile the undeniable mathematical superiority of structure with the fact that, treating a highly sought-after director of design like a robot will just cause them to withdraw from the process entirely?
It's simple, really. You
Yeah.
separate the data collection method from the data analysis method.
Okay, unpack that.
The resolution here is that we need to structure the criteria, not necessarily the conversation. The interview itself can absolutely be fluid. If a candidate says something fascinating about a side project, follow that tangent. If they want to debate the merits of a specific architectural framework, let them lead the discussion.
So keep it conversational.
Yes, build the rapport. But, and this is the absolute non-negotiable part, the evidence gathered during that fluid conversation must be independently scored against pre-agreed competencies on a scorecard.
Okay, let me make sure I am mapping this correctly. You are saying I can have a completely natural, meandering, hour-long whiteboard session and coffee chat with a candidate.
Yes.
But when that candidate leaves the room, I don't just write, "Great guy, culture fit," in the Slack channel.
Please don't do that.
Right. Instead, I sit down and map the specific things he said during our natural conversation against a rigid framework of what the role actually requires.
Precisely. You extract the objective data from the subjective interaction. But of course, the prerequisite for that is that the hiring team actually took the time to define what those competencies are before the candidate ever walked in the room.
Which is the perfect bridge to the industry's latest and arguably most deceptive obsession.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
You know it. If unstructured interviews are basically just a vehicle for shared biases, the obvious operational solution seems to be stripping away the resume, stripping away the pedigree, and just looking at raw skills.
Skills-based hiring.
Exactly. In fact, that's exactly what corporate America claims it's doing right now. The press releases about skills-based hiring are everywhere.
They are ubiquitous. Every company claims they're doing it.
But a recent massive study out of a leading Ivy League business school analyzed the actual mechanical reality of this shift, and the findings are a complete indictment of the corporate rhetoric.
It's pretty damning.
It really is. They found that while 85% of employers proudly claim they've dropped degree requirements and shifted to skills-based hiring.
85% claim this.
Yes, 85%. The actual execution is almost non-existent. Only a tiny fraction fewer than 1 in 700 hires, or roughly 0.14%, are actually affected by these policy changes.
I really want you listening to absorb the scale of that failure. 1 in 700.
It's effectively zero.
It is. Companies are redesigning their career pages. Executives are doing canals about how they value skills over degrees. But when you look at the actual telemetry of who gets the job, the needle hasn't moved a millimeter.
So why the disconnect?
The study identified this as an in-name-only trend, and roughly 45% of companies fall directly into this category.
In name only.
Right. They update the corporate policy. HR scrubs the 4-year degree requirement from the official job posting on the website, but down in the trenches, inside the applicant tracking systems and on the hiring manager's desks, the filtering mechanisms haven't changed at all.
They are secretly still filtering by traditional titles, pedigrees, and degrees.
Exactly.
Walk me through the actual mechanics of how they fake it. Because if HR says no degree required, how is the hiring manager still exclusively hiring Ivy League grads?
Well, it happens in 2 places. First, the parsing algorithms. The company might remove the strict degree requirement, but the algorithm is still quietly weighting candidates who have recognizable university brands or previous tenure at Tier 1 tech companies.
So the system just surfaces those candidates to the top of the pile anyway.
Yep. Second, it's the cognitive load on the hiring manager we discussed earlier.
Right, the panicking manager with 50 resumes.
Exactly. A manager opens a short list of 50 resumes. Assessing a deep, complex skill like distributed systems architecture takes time. It requires reading through project descriptions, looking at portfolios, contextualizing the candidate's past work.
Which they don't have time to do.
Staring at 50 resumes, the manager doesn't have that time. So they revert to heuristics, They scan for 6 seconds, look for a big-name tech company, and use that brand name as a proxy for the skill.
They're using the pedigree as a shortcut because they don't have a tool to instantly visualize the skill.
That's the core issue.
And this is a catastrophic missed opportunity for the business. Hiring based on verified skills is up to 5 times more predictive of on-the-job performance than hiring based on education.
5 times. That's not a marginal improvement.
No, it's massive. We have the data proving this. Furthermore, dropping arbitrary filters like GPAs or specific university tiers massively expands the available talent pool.
Absolutely.
I hear talent acquisition leaders complaining every day about a talent shortage. But if you are artificially restricting your search to people with a specific piece of paper from a specific zip code, you don't have a talent shortage.
No, you don't.
You have a self-inflicted sourcing bottleneck.
That's the primary takeaway here. The gap between corporate policy and hiring reality is entirely a tooling and enablement problem.
Right.
It does not matter what the chief human resources officer dictates in a memo if the engineering manager sitting at their desk doesn't know how to evaluate a skill objectively.
Exactly. If you tell them to hire for cross-functional collaboration, but you don't give them a mechanism to measure it, they will just look at the candidate's previous job title and guess.
So we have to look at what hiring managers actually want and what they actually need to bridge this gap.
Let's describe the absolute dream state for a manager.
Paint the picture.
You have an open headcount, you are stressed, your team is short-staffed, and you are trying to do your actual day job on top of recruiting.
The standard reality for most managers.
That's right. You open your dashboard, and instead of a wall of 50 identical-looking PDF resumes, you see a highly refined shortlist.
Okay.
And instantly, you understand the exact architectural logic of why each candidate is on that list. You aren't relying on a recruiter's hunch. You are looking at clean, objective data mapping the candidate's verified skills directly to your required competencies.
And this is precisely where Eximius AI's scorecards and skill gap reports become the critical infrastructure.
Yes.
This is the difference between reading the menu and actually eating the meal when it comes to skills-based hiring.
I like that analogy.
Eximius AI doesn't just hand the manager a stack of resumes. It provides an interview-ready, ranked shortlist with clear insights that completely cut through the noise of unstructured data.
It fundamentally changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
And the return on investment for utilizing these proper scorecards isn't just theoretical. It shows up in the operational velocity.
Let's hear the data.
Data shows that implementing robust scorecards reduces post-interview debate time by an average of 40%, and it can reduce costly mishires by 25%.
That 40% reduction in debate time is fascinating.
It's a huge time saver.
Think about what usually happens in a debrief room after an unstructured interview panel. 4 people sit around a table for an hour arguing over who felt like the best fit.
Oh, I've been in those meetings. They're awful.
It's a battle of subjective opinions, usually won by whoever has the most political capital in the room.
Yes, the hey PPO effect, the highest paid person's opinion. The VP says, I didn't really love candidate B, and suddenly the 3 junior interviewers silently erase their positive notes and just nod in agreement.
It is the death of objective evaluation.
It really is. Unstructured interviews are like trying to measure the square footage of a house using a rubber band.
A rubber band?
Yeah, the measuring tool stretches and warps depending on who is pulling it, how tired they are, and how much they personally like the house.
That's an excellent way to conceptualize it, which is why the anatomy of a scorecard is so vital.
Let's break that down.
A bad scorecard is just a bureaucratic checklist that people fill out after they've already made their gut decision.
Just going through the motions.
Right. A good scorecard, the kind Eximius AI enables, is engineered to prevent that exact conformity bias. Let's look at the mechanical elements of a highly functional scorecard.
Okay, step 1.
First, you must keep it ruthlessly focused. You want a maximum of 5 to 7 core competencies.
Just 5 to 7. This is a huge failing point I see. Teams try to evaluate 20 different traits in a 45-minute interview.
It's impossible.
If everything is critical, nothing is critical. You experience complete cognitive collapse trying to track that many variables.
Exactly. You narrow it to 5 to 7 essential competencies. Second, you must use behavioral anchors.
Behavioral anchors.
This is where most scorecards fail. They provide a scale from 1 to 5 for a skill like, say, strategic thinking, but nobody defines what a 3 means versus a 5.
Right, so my 3 might be your 5 because we have different internal baselines. The rubber band warps again.
Precisely. A behavioral anchor explicitly defines the evidence required for each score.
Give me an example of that.
For example, a 3 in strategic thinking might mean the candidate successfully executed a strategic plan handed down by leadership.
Okay, pretty standard.
But a 5 means the candidate identified a novel market threat, designed the strategic response, and realigned cross-functional teams to execute it.
Oh, that's much clearer.
You aren't guessing. You are matching their answer to the anchor. Third, and this addresses your point about the high PPO effect earlier, the system must enforce independent scoring before the debrief.
This is the operational firewall.
Yes.
You lock in the objective evaluation before the social dynamics of the hiring panel can corrupt the data.
Everyone submits their scorecard independently. You evaluate the essential must-haves first, clearly delineated from the nice-to-haves. Only after the data is locked do you open the discussion.
I love the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
It's rigorous, it's defensible, and it protects the business.
It does.
But, I have to point out the glaring operational flaw in this entire setup.
What's that?
Even the best Eximius AI scorecard in the world, perfectly calibrated with 5 core competencies and beautiful behavioral anchors, is completely useless if the human being holding the scorecard doesn't know what they're doing.
Yes. Which brings us to a somewhat taboo topic in talent acquisition.
Let's go there.
The industry spends millions of dollars analyzing the skill gaps in the candidate pool. But the most dangerous skill gaps aren't in the labor market. They are sitting right inside the hiring team.
We talk endlessly about upskilling candidates, boot camps, certifications. But what about the untrained interviewer?
Exactly.
The vast majority of interviewers conducting these high-stakes evaluations receive zero formal training on how to actually assess human talent.
Not at all.
They are just handed a calendar invite, a link to a resume, and told to go interview this person.
It's a massive blind spot. We assume that because someone is a senior software architect or, an elite enterprise sales director, they naturally possess the forensic ability to assess those same skills in a stranger during a 30-minute window.
Which is a huge leap in logic.
It is. Interviewing, extracting reliable, predictive behavioral data from another human being is its own distinct, complex skill set.
Absolutely.
And without training, these brilliant engineers and marketers fall into incredibly predictable, destructive pitfalls.
Let's dissect some of those pitfalls, because they derail thousands of shortlists every single day.
Okay.
The most obvious one is the untrained interviewer leaning on default, cliché questions because they don't know how to probe for specific competencies.
The class.
The absolute worst offender. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I hate that question.
What is the actual mechanical value of that question?
There's virtually none. It doesn't measure technical proficiency. It doesn't measure problem solving under pressure.
Right.
It simply measures a candidate's ability to provide a socially acceptable, rehearsed answer. It tests their compliance with corporate norms, not their potential for high performance.
That's exactly. It's useless.
Another profound pitfall is the untrained interviewer's inability to decouple extroversion from actual competence.
Oh, this happens constantly in technical roles. Walk me through the mechanics of that failure.
So an untrained interviewer sits down with a candidate who is highly charismatic, speaks smoothly, commands the room, and utilizes excellent eye contact. The interviewer's brain immediately processes those signals as confidence. And because they lack a structured framework, they conflate that confidence with technical competence.
They assume smooth talking equals good coding.
Exactly. They leave the room dazzled, completely missing the fact that the candidate elegantly talked around every single deep technical question without ever actually answering them.
They got played.
Yep. Conversely, a brilliant but introverted engineer who takes 10 seconds of silence to formulate a complex, accurate answer is penalized for lacking energy.
It's the halo effect happening in real time, but driven by charisma instead of a brand name.
Exactly right.
And then there's anchoring bias, which completely destroys the integrity of a shortlist. I've seen this happen so many times.
Anchoring bias is huge.
It's exactly like real estate. If a real estate agent shows you a fundamentally overpriced, ridiculous $2 million house first, the $1 million house you see next suddenly feels like a pragmatic bargain, even if it's still way over market value.
Right. Your brain anchors to the first number it sees.
Does that exact same cognitive flaw happen with candidates in a hiring pipeline?
It maps perfectly. Anchoring bias in hiring occurs when the team unconsciously establishes the very first person they interview as the baseline metric for the entire role.
So whoever goes first sets the bar, fairly or not.
Exactly. If the first candidate was an absolute disaster, an aggressively average second candidate suddenly looks like a superstar savior by comparison.
And they hire them.
The team overrates them. Or, more dangerously, if the first candidate was a true unicorn, a one-in-a-million talent who ultimately demands too much money or takes another offer the team anchors to that impossible standard,
Oh, that's even worse.
they then proceed to unfairly reject perfectly qualified, excellent candidates because they don't match the phantom standard of candidate number one.
So the measuring tool isn't just a rubber band, it's a rubber band that permanently stretches based on the very first thing you measure.
A great way to put it.
If that is the operational reality, what is the fix? Because the standard industry response to a broken pipeline is just to increase top-of-funnel activity. Just stuff more candidates into the machine.
Adding volume to a fundamentally uncalibrated machine just creates more noise and exponentially more wasted time.
So what do we?
The fix isn't finding better candidates. It's calibrating the teams evaluating them. You have to train the interviewers to understand these exact cognitive biases.
Right.
You have to train them on how to use the Eximius AI tools, how to ask probing behavioral questions that map to the scorecards, and how to stick rigidly to the behavioral anchors instead of their gut reactions.
You calibrate the instrument reading the data, not just the data itself.
Exactly. Calibrate the instrument.
That is the perfect synthesis of everything we've unpacked today. If we pull all these threads together, the core theme is undeniable.
What's the takeaway?
Shortlists ultimately fail, and those 41-day hiring cycles reset because teams never took the time to explicitly agree on what good actually means before they started looking.
They rushed to the market without a blueprint, driven by the urgency of an open headcount.
Yeah.
And as the data clearly shows, when you rely on gut feeling, unstructured conversations, or superficial proxies like university pedigrees, you just perpetuate bias and guarantee costly mishires.
So we want to leave you with one concrete, actionable operational change to implement immediately.
Take notes on this one.
Before you open any new role, before you authorize a recruiter to source a single profile, mandate a 30-minute alignment meeting with the hiring team.
Just 30 minutes.
Protect that 30 minutes ruthlessly. Use that time to agree on exactly 5 core competencies. Define the behavioral anchors for what a 3 and a 5 look like for each of those skills, and build the scorecard.
And do not look at a single resume until that architecture is in place.
Not one.
That upfront alignment isn't just administrative overhead. It is the absolute foundation of modern predictive hiring.
Completely agree.
And it is exactly the operational shift that Eximius AI enables. Through intelligent scorecards and deep skill gap reports, Eximius AI forces that critical alignment and equips hiring teams with the objective data they need to make highly accurate decisions at scale.
It takes that murky, subjective diagnostic landscape and turns it into a structured environment you can navigate with actual precision.
Exactly.
We're going to leave you with a final, slightly wry question to ponder as you look at your own organization's processes.
Think about your team's track record here.
If an algorithm audited your last 5 hiring decisions, rigorously comparing the interview notes against the actual required skills, would it find a pattern of objective skill evaluation? Or would it just find a highly expensive track record of hiring people you'd enjoy getting a coffee with?
Something to think about.
We will see you for part 5.